Today's video is sponsored by the Bismuth Smith. More about them at the end of the video. Recently, I got to take a trip and visit my friend Guga and film several videos with him. It was a ton of fun, and we've both got fantastic videos for all of our channels. If you haven't seen the ones on his or mine, definitely go check them out. But while I was there, I did notice that he has a lot of knives, and you've probably seen some of them in the background of his videos. He has more. Guys, they're not all up on the wall. He has so many more. But even though he has more knives than probably anyone else I know, I thought it'd be fun to make one and send it to him. So I did talk to him about this. It's not a surprise or anything. I asked him what kind of knife he would want, like what handle shape fits best. I took a picture of his hand next to a ruler so I had a good sense of the size that would be good for him. So today I'm going to try and make a knife that he likes, that is the style and size and flexibility that he likes best, and hopefully it will be a knife that he likes and uses a lot. Now, when I asked him what type of knife he used the most, he said that he liked using this fillet-shaped knife more than anything else he had in the kitchen. It's just small enough to work with easily. It's really good for removing silver skin and fat from meat when you're trimming it down. And he said that he liked one, he'd used several of course, he liked one where the blade was actually fairly rigid and not as springy. You can get a fillet knife that will just flip all the way sideways, but that's not what he wanted. So this is the shape and size of the fillet knife I'm gonna be making, and I'm gonna try and leave the blade just rigid enough that it's about where he likes it. And I recently got a piece of special steel. So this is a piece of Damascus, but it's a stainless Damascus steel. It's got a pretty cool pattern in it. The pattern's called Wild, and hopefully later when I do an etch that will come out really nicely. You may also notice that the bar I have is not quite long enough for this whole knife. So what I am going to do is I'm going to cut the whole blade and part of the handle out, and then I'm actually going to weld on a bit more of a different non-Damascus stainless steel on as the handle, but because I'm not trying to etch the handle anyway, it doesn't matter. It's all just gonna be polished up nice and shiny. Hopefully you can't see much of the division, and any tiny gaps that may be there between the two steels should be welded together. So my first step is to take this profile, draw it on a piece of metal, and cut that shape out. I do also have these cool mixed resin scales that I'm gonna be putting on, and these just perfectly match the color of his channel, Guga Foods, so I really like that that's gonna work out nicely as well. All right, we've got the profile in a pretty good spot. I'm liking that. You can see how it's lining up with my original design, looking good. So after this is heat treated, I will weld on the other piece of steel. I don't really think there's much advantage to doing it ahead of time. It's gonna work just as well after, so might as well do it after.
A few moments later.
Little bit of discoloration up here at the top. I'm not worried. My guess is just a tiny hole or something was in the foil in it, but I think we are looking good. And now it's time to go into the liquid nitrogen overnight.
Heat treating went great, took it out of the liquid nitrogen. I ran it through 2 tempering cycles in our oven to take down the hardness a little bit so it's not brittle. It should be a little bit flexible and a lot tougher. And now we need to move on to getting the rest of the metal on there. Since the size of the billet I had was limited, like I said, I am going to weld on a handle, so we're gonna get that set up right now. This is the shape of the knife, and you can see how the part I've already made fits over it. So now I have to trace that out and then get a meetup line. And I'm intentionally leaving extra space all the way around this because as I try and sand in that meetup line, I'm gonna make that my first step so that these two parts can just beautifully meet up and have as little seam as possible. But if that ends up changing the angle a little bit, I don't want this to be really dialed in too much to that spot. So mostly right now, I'm just going to draw this line where I want to cut and sand this piece of metal, and then I'm going to sand both of these, trying to be as precise as I can to get a really nice clean meet-up finish so that we have very little seam. I'm going to be welding the knife blade onto the bar. On the edges, I don't actually want to do any welding because then weld bead could show up and that could rust eventually. But I do want a nice welded connection in between. So what I've done is I've ground down a little bit in the middle. So I'm actually only going to be welding in between these lines where I've ground it down. So I'll have a weld that goes along there, same thing on the other side. I'll then grind it down flat to all be flush and even with the knife. And hopefully that will increase the amount of purchase that the weld has. It'll penetrate deeper into the steel, but hopefully it will still leave a nice, doesn't get rusty stainless steel edge because these are both stainless steels. And with that, the knife is done. It looks great. Sweet, thanks. Good video, everyone. All right, the profile's looking good. Now to make sure that the handle is the same thickness and just perfectly parallel with the blade, I'm gonna put the whole thing on the surface grinder attachment just to clean it all up and make it as uniform as possible. All right, surface ground, I think this is looking really good. The profile's nice, the shape is good, it fits well enough in my hand. It's made for someone with bigger hands than me. Overall, it's good, so at this point, it is time to start working on the blade itself. The process is going to be pretty much the same as when I was cutting out the blade. I'll use the angle grinder to chop off big chunks and then smooth it out on the belt sander. All right, I've added a little bit of that taper so it gets narrower up near the point, and it's given it a little bit more flexibility. It's still going to get a bit more as I grind in the primary bevels, and I think that's the step I'm at now. I've got a noticeable distal taper going along the blade as well, just because I did an even narrowing down the whole thing. So I'm going to have to be very careful as I try to keep a somewhat consistent grind on that primary bevel, because as it's thinner down here, it's going to be easy to go through more metal at once. The knife is ground to shape and pretty well polished, so the next step is going to be doing the etching. And here is the etching setup I've got. I have a glass container which is full of muriatic acid, and that glass container is sitting in a pot of regular water, and that's to help heat the muriatic acid but not to heat it too much. And then I've got this all next to a window with a fan that's going to be blowing air out to keep good ventilation because I don't want muriatic acid fumes filling the room. I have right here a jar full of water and baking soda to neutralize the knife after I pull it out of the acid. So I'm going to be soaking in the acid for maybe 20 seconds at a time, taking it out, neutralizing it, wiping it off, and then re-polishing it. And hopefully by doing those same steps over and over a few times, we'll be able to get the etching from the different types of steel in that cool Damascus pattern, but keep the mirror finish that we have. So you'll be able to see it as sort of a relief that's still very shiny. Now, this is my first time trying this process, so I'm not 100% sure that I'm gonna get it just right, and we may end up with a little bit darker of lines than I'm originally thinking we will, but we're just gonna have to try it out and see how it goes. All right, like I said, I'm gonna go for maybe 20 seconds the first time, see how that goes. Ooh, that's fun. So, very light etching, but the way that it's reacted is really cool. You can see the pattern very nicely on there. And at this point, I'm going to do that same thing, I don't even know how many times. So now that I've acid etched it a little bit and neutralized it, I'm going to rinse it and then I'm going to polish it again, back to a mirror finish. And I'm gonna do that step over and over until I'm getting a result that I like. I don't know if this is gonna be like 4 times or like 40 times. Before it goes back on the buffing wheel, I'm also using a 5000 grit sandpaper to try and remove any buildup or anything on the outside. 5000 might be a little smoother than I really need, but it makes the polishing much faster. It seems to come back to a full polish really nice and quick. I just kind of did a couple passes on each side and now it's shiny again. So once again, I'm gonna wash it off, back into the acid. All right, I have gotten the blade to a level I am very happy with the etch versus mirror polish shine to it. At some angles, it just looks like a plain metal silvery blade, but if you get the right angles, that Damascus pattern really comes out very nicely, and you can see how it bends the light to be a truly three-dimensional effect on the blade, but it's a very shallow three-dimensional effect, which is just what I was going for. Very happy with how it turned out, which means it is time to move on to adding a handle, because while you could use it like this, it's not very comfortable. Now I sanded and polished the fronts of these because once they're glued on and attached to the knife, it's nearly impossible to work on them. So I get those all nice and finished up the way I want it to look when the knife is completely done, and then I glue it on. That way, as I'm working on the rest of the sides, those I can get to those without scratching up and ruining the blade that I've worked a while on. These front parts, now they're looking shiny, it's time to glue the handles on. And I'm just gonna really quick scuff up the inside of the scales as well as the metal so that the glue has something really good to bond to. Might be about time for some new bottles of glue. The glue is done attaching the handles, so now it's time to shape. We've got some extra glue coming off here. We've got a little spot where some paper towel stuck to it, but all of that's gonna get sanded off anyway, so it doesn't matter. Not to mention we've got a bit of extra pin right here. So we have to shape this all down until it actually meets the metal, clean all of that up, shape it the way we want, and then we'll polish it up and we should have a good functioning knife. But because I don't want to ruin the whole blade as I work on the handle, I'm going to cover it in tape. Everything is all polished up and it is looking beautiful. This is fantastic. I love how much the colors pop. I love the bright silver and then the bold colors on it, and I think that this is just a great design. It's a tiny bit big for my hand, but if you've seen Guga's videos, he's a big guy. He's got big hands. I did take measurements, so hopefully it'll fit his hand well. All that's left at this point is to sharpen up the edge and it'll be ready to send off. All right, the knife is lovely and sharp. If I can hold the paper correctly, it's a great demonstration. Oh, beautiful. All sharpened up, all shiny, all polished, ready to go. So I'm going to be sending this off to Guga, and hopefully he likes it.
I have a package for you.
My good friend Nate sent over a gift, mystery box, and let's open it up. Thank you, Nate, first of all. I'm excited to see what it's gonna be. And we got a lot of blacks. What is this called? I don't even know the name. But underneath, we got... Oh! Now I must say, I am a knife lover, and I have plenty of knives behind me. But when you told me you're gonna make me a custom knife, I had no idea it was gonna look this badass, Nate. Wow, I love the handles though. The handle feels just right on the hand. I know you took measurements when you were here, and you did them right. Beautiful Damascus blade. Oh, she cuts real good. I'm like a little kid on a candy store. Thank you, my brother. You're gonna be seeing me use this several times on many videos. You are the man, and I'm waiting for you for our next video.
Today's video has been sponsored by the Bismuth Smith. Guys, if you haven't seen this stuff before, it is pretty frigging amazing. Bismuth, if you don't know, is a metal. It's atomic element 83. It is more rare than silver, and it forms oxides that create these vibrant, iridescent rainbow colors. It looks really cool, and the Bismuth Smith has pioneered amazing ways to bring these colors out to their absolute fullest extent. Every one of their pieces is handcrafted, and you should definitely check them out. To see more of these incredible creations, check out the website, thebismuthsmith.com, also linked in the description below. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Your support means the world to me, and a very special shout out thank you to all of my supporters on Patreon. I could not do this without you, and I cannot tell you how much it means to me to have you supporting me. If anyone is interested in joining my Patreon supporters, the link for that is down in the description. Thanks for watching. See you next time.